Hello everyone. I hope you all are doing well. My name is Ritika and I welcome you all to our LinkedIn Live session on 2020X Vision, Ignite Revenue Engine X Factor with the Essential Framework. So before we start our session, I'm just going to share some housekeeping notes with you all. So in our today's session, I request first of all the participants to please mention their name and their location in the comment section. And at the end of the session, we are also going to have a Q&A. And at Grow Sutra, we encourage active participation and engagement. And also, in case you have missed watching our past session on the series, so you can visit our YouTube channel. I'm going to post the link to our YouTube channel shortly in the comment section, and you can watch the on-demand videos over there. So we have had many sessions on 2020X Vision, and we are going to have another one today. So let's get started. And because we have an incredible line of speakers for today's session who will share their expertise and insights on this evolving topic. So I will over to you, Vishendra.
Thank you, Ritika. Thank you so much. And I'd like to welcome all of you who are joining us today on this 20th session that we have been running on Growth Sutra LinkedIn Live. This session is going to be more on Ignite Revenue Engine X Factor with the essential frameworks. We had, while Ritika did mention about some of the sessions that we have done in past, we began a series on 2020X Vision, especially on Revenue Engine. From last month onwards, we had our first session there where we discussed about Revenue Engine and what are the critical factors that are required in the Revenue Engine, and then we also delved into Sales Funnel. So I'm not going to take much time over here, but then let's begin with the session. We are going to have a deep, we are going to have, we are going to dive deeper into some more specific frameworks in the session. So we are going to look at account-based marketing. We are going to look at land and expand, and we are also going to look at growth hacking. As an introduction, I am Vishwendra, founder of Growth Sutra. We are building Growth Sutra as a platform that can provide Fortune 500 expert insights and action related to market access, brand and revenue acceleration. I have over 25 years of experience. I'd like to also share with you an announcement. We have recently launched a GTM Expert AI pilot on ChatGPT Marketplace. So you can access this pilot primarily to craft your GTM strategy and also to practice role play with ChatGPT to test out your sales messaging. So this is currently available on ChatGPT Marketplace, but if you are a ChatGPT 4 user, you can easily access it. I'm honored to have esteemed speakers we are joining today. Let me invite them here. We have Dennis Roman. He's founder Roman's Number, and he's also a partner in crime for Growth Sutra leadership sessions that we have been running since November 2022. I also have Stephen. Stephen is the business development leader with QED. He was there with us in the last session, and we had a very inspiring session, especially in terms of how to rev up your revenue engine. Today we are also joined by Vivek. Vivek is the co-founder of Accelerate X Ventures, and this is the first time he's here on this session. So before we start, let me invite the speakers to talk about themselves and to also talk about this 2020X vision and the series that we are currently running. Dennis, over to you.
Hey, thanks, Vish. Very nice beginning, and thank you, Ritika. I'm excited and looking forward to this today. Our audience may not be aware, but Vish and I have been fortunate to have been running these monthly, and this is actually our 20th session. You can see it on the frame there, number 20, and the audience continues to increase. We're delighted with that. I'm delighted to be here today. I'll be talking about account-based marketing for enterprises for the most part. Stephen, over to you.
Thanks, Dennis. Thanks, Vish. So yeah, I've got over 30 years of business development experience and running business units. And so my topic today that I'm going to try to help with this discussion is land and expand. You know, how do you go from a current customer to a bigger customer, and what is the strategy to do that? Vivek, you're up to you.
Thanks, Stephen. It's great to be here. Thank you, Vishwendra, for inviting me. Very excited to be here with all the esteemed speakers. I come from a technology background. I've built a couple of companies, exited one, and now helping very early stage startups in building their businesses and going from 1 to 10. And that is what our focus and forte is at AccelerateX Ventures. I'll be talking about growth hacking for startups today. So let's deep dive.
Thank you, everyone. And as they've already talked about the areas that they would be covering, this is the flow that we have built for you. So I'm going to talk about what are the drivers of Revenue Engine, and as we pursue money, chasing deals and chasing money. So I'll just set the context with that. And then we are going to have Dennis, Stephen, and Vivek, who are going to individually talk about their topics. Towards the end, we are going to have a panel question and answer. I would request all the audience who are joining us today to share their questions in the comment box so that we can pick those questions and have these questions answered by our expert speakers today. Without taking much time, let me begin with by setting the context. So where we look at the business, ecosystem, we see there's the pursuit of money is fiercely competitive, and I'm going to share some insights, some data. So if you look at my screen, there are two numbers that I've shared. There's 351K for 2021 and 332 million for 2021. So any guesses, any of the speakers, what these numbers could be?
That's how much bigger the ice caps got back then? No?
I would prefer to have that those numbers, but these are the numbers of companies that we have. So 351,000 is the number of large companies where employees are more than 250, while 332 million or 333 million are the number of small companies which have been existing in 2021. So that's the marketplace that you see. Where number of while small companies are dominating, and in some of the countries, of course, small companies are contributing to 50% of GDP. But there's a marketplace which have been there. However, when you look at further, the size difference between large and small US companies is growing. So if you look at the chart which I have shown. This chart is only till 2017, and this was reported in HBR. But you look at the exponential growth that has been seen, especially in terms of the difference, the revenue size difference between the large companies and the small companies. So that shows that the large companies are actually clocking greater revenues. Let's look at another set of stats. So these are, small and mid-sized companies which are actually transitioning to large companies. So till 2000, this number was 15%, and this actually growth rate halved by 2017. While in India, if you look at these numbers, so 15% of small businesses, especially on manufacturing, became medium-sized in 2022, and 5% did so in 2023. While I can contribute this number to some of these schemes that have been running by government. So there's a PLI scheme, and which is kind of empowering these small businesses. But it all boils down to the fact that there is a fierce competition in the market, and we need to have work out our strategies so that we can create our own unique positioning in the market. Acquiring customers is becoming harder. So if you are looking at some general stats, so acquiring a new customer can cost 5 times more than retaining an existing customer. I've shared some of these stats in my previous session, but I've picked up some more stats which are which are especially on customer acquisition. So if 70% of B2B sellers find it challenging to engage customer stakeholders, that's been reported by Gartner. So if there's a virtual selling, if they are involved in virtual sellings, only 70% of B2B sellers, 70% of B2B sellers find it very challenging. There's also a trust gap. So there's a 57% gap between leaders' perception of their customer, of their consumers' trust. They trust that much, but there's a gap. The actual level of trust consumers are actually low, and there's a gap of almost 57%. The last bullet point here is salespeople spend more than 1 year researching prospects to understand their pain points better. That was reported by HubSpot. But these are some numbers which does make the make the argument that acquiring customers in today's time has become very harder.
Hey, Vish. Vish, let me interrupt. Yeah. Go back one slide. So I'm very, I get the point on this salespeople 12-month thing, but that is a very depressing number for me. If it took a salesperson a year to figure out what the pain, it's, I get the spirit of what HubSpot is saying, but God help us if that's what, and I mean, that's not even, that's wall time, right? That's not actually the amount of effort they put in. It's just nuts to think that they could spend that kind of, burn that many cycles on that particular point. So I challenge HubSpot on that a little bit, but go ahead.
No, yeah, I did add this point for you only, Dennis, because you talk about research a lot, and since I noticed this point, I felt this might be something that could trigger some discussion. Yeah, but yeah, it's good. So there's also changing dynamics, especially in terms of B2B buying journey. There's a report that's been shared by G2, where they have studied 1,000 B2B buyers. And there's a notable drop in traditional buying sources. So they are more, and this is primarily for tech products, and consumers or customers are buying these tech products either from third-party marketplace or from a reseller. However, there's another stat that I've looked at is 72% of the companies that are generating fewer than 50 new opportunities per month leads to revenue goal failure, compared to 15% for 51 to 100 opportunities and 4% for 101 to 200 opportunities. So this is a very aggressive target, but yes, this is required, especially when you are working in a mid-size or a large enterprise. If your sales team is not able to generate 50 new opportunities per month, then it's questionable. So yeah, that's a good stat that I thought to also share. Impact of opportunity pipeline. Okay, I've already covered that. I also want to quickly cover in terms of the drivers that are driving that could prioritize picking up a revenue engine that can deliver. So large technology firms often deal with complex and higher value products, and they target Fortune 500 companies for higher value deals. So they need a very streamlined revenue engine framework within the organization so that they can meet their goals. While medium-sized SaaS companies or medium-sized companies typically begin with one product and aim to repeat this for other customers and grow within current client organizations by maximizing their customer lifetime value and improving client retention. While a small startup or a small enterprises often have limited resources, their products are evolving, mostly in experimenting phase, and need to achieve rapid growth to secure additional funding or reach profitability. For them, traditional methods are often not feasible, and that prompts the need for innovative, low-cost growth strategies. So what I shared till now is primarily just to set the context and share a problem statement that we have. And now we are going to move to speakers and see their insights in terms of the three areas that we have laid out. One is the account-based transformation for large enterprises, and then we are going to have look at land and expand and growth hacking. So I'll move to Dennis for his session. Dennis.
Okay. Thanks, Vish. That was a great introduction. Very, very nicely done. And I thought that made a lot of sense. I'm, as usual, going to go through my stuff pretty quickly. Yeah. All right. You're going to do it for me. Okay, great. That's good. Okay. So my business model is 100% predicated on accomplishing sales enablement along with appropriate marketing messaging by using financial analysis. That's the simplest way I could state it. And hopefully you'll find a little bit of this of interest. Let's go. Go ahead, Vish. Okay. So account-based marketing for enterprises. This is a well-traveled road. It's a well-documented approach. It is very familiar to all and sundry practically, especially the enterprise crowd. Account-based marketing came into vogue and it's remained in vogue. It's big brother, which is now account-based everything, has superseded accounts-based marketing, if you will. But to stick to the more rudimentary points of it, the ID, so research is required. And that's, I should wear a t-shirt that says research because that's what I do. So the ID target accounts is the very first big step. Crafting discrete, specific go-to-market plans, personalized campaigns. Okay, you can see how this cycle works, right? And execute the outbound, execute the inbound, measure what you're doing, refine and optimize, and rinse and repeat, and get better and better and better. And I'm sure the audience wouldn't be surprised that I took issue with that 12-month statistic from HubSpot, because you ain't got 12 months to spend waiting to figure stuff out. Okay, go ahead, Vish. I'm a big believer in the Pareto principle, and 80% of effects come from 20% of causes. 80% of the company's revenue comes from 20% of its customers. That's a tell to something that Vish already covered about the revenue that needs to be generated by large customers in order to keep enterprises afloat. So there is the quantitative absolute dollar value of revenue, which is important. Is my revenue going up every year? Obviously, and by what amount? There's the qualitative nature of revenue, which is what is the quality of what I'm bringing in? And that is why large enterprises on their quarterly reports always mention how many new $100 million accounts they've gotten or whatever. It's not just the revenue size, it's the quality of the revenue as well. Okay, 80% of complaints come from 20% of the customers, 80% of the company's problems can be traced to 20%, 80% of the results. And that's the Pareto principle in a nutshell. But where is that 20% in ABM? Okay, Dennis, where is it? Go ahead, Vish. All right. Yeah, so this comes directly out of my history. I worked many years on Wall Street. This is a picture then. It's not accurate any longer. It's the spirit of it that's very important. But I think this picture existed almost around the same time Pareto existed, when he coined his Pareto principle. Anyway, on the left are the trades that a brokerage house does on any given day. And 20% of those trades, then, it's not so much that true anymore, are considered DKs. That's actually what they're called. That's actually in the regulations. They're called DKs, and it actually means don't know. I don't know this trade. Okay, so one brokerage house rejects a trade because they don't recognize it coming in from another brokerage house, and they actually call them DKs. Okay, well, those DKs cost the brokerage house 80% of all of its trading costs. Dealing with those DKs is important because 80% of the costs are being created by them. So if you're a salesperson and you could see a diagram like this, you're going to go work on the DKs. You're going to figure out what your solution might have that could help in this regard, because it'll have the biggest implication for cost. Go ahead, Vish. Okay, so customers, you have ABM can be used. A rose brand, any other name, could smell as sweet, according to Shakespeare. You could use ABM for customers, and you can use ABM for target accounts. And the reason I'm making that distinction is, it'll be obvious in a second. Customers assume their existing vendors have intimate familiarity with their company and what they're doing, which is the danger when you change salespeople, because there could be a drop in familiarity, and any drop exhibited to a customer is looked at with great disdain. They're assuming if you're a vendor supporting them, you know what the hell's going on in their shop. But just like on Wall Street, you can't sell a stock unless there's a buyer. And other vendors' customers are, in fact, your likely targets, right? So your competitor has a customer and you want to go after that account. For you, it's a target. For them, it's a customer. Well, target accounts don't expect you to know, as much about their operation as their existing vendors. And in my opinion, this represents the best opportunity to distinguish yourself and your expertise. I'll show you what I mean. Go ahead, Vish. And I'm just about done here. So here's one where an emerging ad tech company built its entire revenue strategy around landing and expanding the world's 50 largest consumer advertisers. On the face of it, that sounds like it makes sense. It's a new emerging ad tech company, and they've decided to go after the 50 largest consumer advertisers there are in the world. Now, at first blush, this may sound innocent enough. I think it's insanity that an emerging tech company thinks they're going to make a dent on the 50 largest advertisers in the world. But okay, let's assume they can make a dent. In my opinion, they can make a dent if they compete on intimacy. Not on price, not on features, not on size, not on SaaS, not on cloud, not on blockchain. Intimacy. And that's where the research comes in. And in my opinion, the 20% of ABM bang for your buck comes on the research on the front end. And maybe going after the 50 largest consumer advertisers makes sense. Maybe. I think they probably should be going after 5 of those people and be as intimately aware, because their existing installed vendor base gets lazy and won't necessarily keep up. Anyway, my argument is ABM is really, go ahead, Vish. ABM is really enhanced. The 20% comes from research. And now I've red lighted the ID target accounts. The ID of the right target accounts dwarfs in impact everything else that you're going to do in an ABM campaign. That research is available for all public companies. It's easy to do. That's the name of my business. That's it for me, Vish. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. You also mentioned ABE earlier. So you want to talk about ABE?
Well, ABE is even a more sophisticated program. It takes into account, obviously, all of the entire array of touch points that should be considered regarding customers. That means your website needs to be perfect. Perfect. If there's a spelling error on your website, God help you. Okay. Every email that you write needs to be perfect. Every time you do an outreach, every phone call, every piece of content should look like it was idiosyncratic to the person you're sending it to. ABE is a universally but larger example from ABM, and it means you're firing on all cylinders. The biggest death trap in most enterprises is sales and marketing not only aren't integrated, they don't even get along half the time. And that is probably the worst process problem on ABE that is in the enterprise. And in fact, it is something that can be fixed, which would ideally really leverage the quality, the output, and the success of winning new revenue. Back to you, Vish.
Yeah, thanks, Dennis. So just to add to what you shared on ABE, there's ABE can actually extend to a larger organization. So while you did mention about some of the areas which are very critical in the entire buying journey, because there's a journey which is certainly from the website to the salespeople who is going to close a deal. But at the same time, during the journey, we also have some more functions like customer service or even delivery or project delivery. These people also matter a lot, especially when you are driving account-based marketing or account-based building account-based action. You're trying to you have high-touch accounts that you can pursue day in, day out, considering the fact that if you are not going to be there, your competition is going to
fill the vacuum.
Fill the vacuum. So thank you so much, Dennis, on that. But in terms of ABM, how do you measure the ROI of ABM initiatives, especially when you see these long sales cycles? So, like I talked about this data point wherein sales team takes almost a year to figure out pain points of their customer.
Well, certainly the larger. So there's a direct mathematical relationship between the length of the sales cycle and the size of the deal, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're selling a point product to a company for 40 grand, it ain't going to take you a year to get that done. If you're selling a core banking system to a bank, something that they know they're going to have to live with for 10 years because you could never pull a core banking system out very easily, that sales cycle is probably going to be at least a year. And if it doesn't have heavy involvement from your CEO or the C-suite of your own company, you're probably not going to be successful. So revenue growth is one. Pipeline growth. Pipeline growth is very critical to track. The multi-touch attribution I was talking about, you put a value on every kind of attribution touch point that there can be. This is in accounting, right? This is informed guesstimating. Is an email worth $5 and a website lookup is $10? Anyway, you need to assign values to the various touch points that, of course, if there's a conversion rate, the changes in the length of the sales cycle is a very big phenomenon in that regard. So there's no shortage. There's pages of numbers that can be used. But I also said before, it's not just the revenue size, which is easy to track. It's the quality of the revenue that's being ascribed. And that shows up on their income statement, which is another class that I run. The income statement really does help talk about the quality of the revenue that's coming in and not just the quality. Anyway, so a great many things can be measured and need be measured, and they're not measured. And you know what no one does? No one's established, no one, not the customers or the vendors. Nobody establishes a baseline to start from. They just start, and then they start capturing numbers. But there's no baseline. When somebody puts in a new solution at an institution and there's no baseline to go back to and figure, they just say, well, here's where we are today. Okay, but where were you? That's one of the big traps, is nobody establishes the baseline, not the sellers or the buyers. Back to you, Vish.
Yeah, thank you, Dennis. And, as you said, so, opportunities, while it's good to have a number of opportunities, what also matters is how you handle those opportunities. That's a quote that was shared by Mark Hunter. So I just thought, it just reminded me of that quote. So it's very important. That's what we are talking about today. That's the revenue engine framework, where you can manage. You are going to learn how to handle opportunities. So let me now invite Stephen to take us through on land and expand.
Yeah, well, thanks, Stephen. Vish. Do you want me to put a slide up, or do you have it?
No, if you could pull this slide.
Okay.
Do not have it right now.
All right.
I have this slide. So while you pull this up, let me talk about Stephen. So Stephen has been a business development leader and is a powerhouse of business transformation. His leadership methodology has consistently delivered triple-digit improvements in execution, and his expertise in transforming underperforming businesses and territories is unparalleled. Is that correct, Stephen?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so
let's see. Can you see my screen?
No, not yet.
Share screen, select window. Okay. Share screen. My apologies.
Why don't we start, Stephen? Let me pull your slides from the email that you sent me yesterday.
Yeah, so I think I want to echo some of what Vish and Dennis were focusing on. To land and expand, I think you need to be documenting the things that Dennis was referring to in terms of the business case. And then the cost of your cycle, your sales cycle, those are things that need to be measured. And then, because you have this customer, but the question that I think I want you to focus on before you start investing and expanding, and that is to address the issue that Vish and Dennis are alluding to, and that is retention. I mean, do you have the right strategy and budget and the roles for customer success, account management versus sales and marketing? So Dennis is talking a lot about growing new customers, and Vish is talking about all the dynamics of getting those new customers and the cost and time to do so. Well, now you have that customer. So I think the critical thing is, okay, how do you grow that relationship? Well, Vish, in these discussions, Vish asked me a simple question, and I said, well, how? Well, first they have to be happy, and to Dennis's point, part of it, understanding where was your baseline. That's important, because if the customer forgets that and you forget that, or you never documented it to begin with, it's hard to evaluate the value that you're providing or you expected to provide. And so I think it's very important to have the roles from your sales cycle to the implementation of that customer, whatever your product or service is, and then the ongoing customer support and relationship dynamics. I've unfortunately been at organizations where I've listened to executives tell me, "We hate you. We can't wait to get rid of you." Well, if you're in that dynamic, you're not going to be able to expand. So, I think there's certain principles that you need to look at. What is your strategy in terms of not just winning that business, but how do you retain it, and then leverage it as a reference, but also how might you grow the relationship? And you do that as you start your strategy for your sales cycle, not after you've won the customer, because it's too, you're going to be reacting, because there's a difference between proactive account management and then reactionary. So within all that, the account needs to be defined, in your sales and marketing strategy, the management and implementation, and the customer success roles. And they may be the same people, but you need to take that into consideration, that a salesperson, if they're also doing account management, well, then they're not doing as much, greenfield, business development. They're splitting their time, and you need to be, put that into consideration. And I think that's part of what Vish is alluding to, why sales cycles take so long, because oftentimes companies haven't made a distinction between customer success role and account management sales role. And what I'm suggesting is strongly is make those distinctions. And maybe you don't have the budget, and smaller companies don't, but just be acknowledging it, because it's a time consumption. Do you want your salespeople performing 50% of their work on new development and 50% of their work on customer retention? That's okay, but just document that. Understand those roles and where they fit in your organization, and making sure that if it's 50-50 is your ratio, that it is happening and that you're measuring it. To Dennis's point, if you're not measuring, you don't know. And the way you measure customer success is by asking, how are we doing? Large enterprises typically will tell you how you're doing. That many of the larger enterprises I've worked with, they score all of their vendor partner relationships. But lots of smaller companies don't. They don't do it in a formal way, but it behooves you as a vendor partner to consider doing so. And then from there, define, then once you've got that baseline that Dennis is alluding to, then you can start deciding, is it time and how might I invest to expand these relationships? Basically, define your roles and that customer journey, then make a decision within your strategy as to what does success look like with the customer, and how do we expand that, and then how do we invest with our resources. And so whether you have a customer success person or it's your salesperson's doing that job, define that role and the activities to do so, and then lay those out. And that goes back to where Vish started us out. What's your sales cycle? And then within your sales cycle, there's another cycle, right? What is your cycle related to customer retention? So one thing that every business should be measuring on a monthly basis is your attrition. How much attrition do you have, and how might you reduce that to expand your profitability? Because his point is very clear that, and Dennis alludes to this as well, it costs you a lot more money to go get a new customer than it does to keep one. But you have to define the roles and responsibilities. So I've spent a lot of my career in the technology space, and as we've moved from hosted services to your own data centers, and then now back to what I consider cloud hosted services, what you've seen in that industry is that many organizations have struggled with that transition from where the data center and all the costs and management of those applications and technologies are on the customer, to a cloud model where now if you're providing a cloud, you're providing services around that, and they haven't quantified how to do that or set up the roles and relationships and how they're measured and documented. And it's been a difficult transition for some companies to go from selling an on-premise solution to selling a cloud. And so, these are questions that you have to ask and measure. Back to Dennis's value points, create your KRAs or KPIs, whatever you want to call them, around that whole customer journey. And then the roles within your organization and the processes to support that customer journey, and make sure you're measuring whether it's happening or not happening, or otherwise, all that business you spent so much time getting is going out the back door, is leaving you. Because as Dennis pointed out, everyone is coming after your customers. It behooves you to have processes in place to keep them. And then why you invest, Vish pointed it out. It costs you much less to maintain a customer. That's why you land and expand. And more often than not, they will help you get new customers faster when you have happy customers. Any thoughts, Jim?
Yeah, no, it's very important if you have happy customers, especially when you are working in a mid segment and you want your processes, your products to be repeatable and drive business. And that's where it's important to kind of build some relationship loyalty programs so that you can drive better success. But yeah, thank you so much, Steven. You have anything else to add here? Any question from Dennis or Vivek?
No, I think that was very insightful, Stephen. The only question, I want to know is typically companies land the deal, but they don't focus a lot on expanding because it's the hunting team that goes, right?
Yes.
And customer service typically becomes lip service, irrespective of how much vision, values, and
they're reactionary, right? They're reactionary versus proactive. And thanks for bringing that up, Vic. I mean, if you put in processes and resources that are proactively, managing that customer relationship and what I call customer success versus reacting. Most organizations are basically reacting. And as a result, that's not what I would call a land and expand strategy. That's really just, holding on, basically.
And the best example is when you call the customer service line, they take 5 minutes to pick up, and the voice says that you're very important.
Yes. Yeah.
So how do you expand the way, when these kind of things, we may have strategy PPTs running in the boardroom, but on the ground, things are pretty different.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah. And so you have to think through that whole cycle, and back to Dennis's value point, measure, measure, measure. So when I ran a business, I looked at retention and attrition, our attrition numbers as a high value opportunity because of Vish's point. We were spending so much money to acquire new customers, and then we have an X percentage going out the back door. And I looked at it and said, well, if we could just cut down 50% of our attrition rate, what we ended up doing was putting $5 million to the bottom line by changing our processes of being less reactionary and proactive in our customer management. And then from there, we could then focus on an expansion strategy. So how do we proactively go after these current customers with new products and services, or helping them grow, being trusted advisor versus someone that they're looking to replace.
Yeah, exactly.
Agree to that.
And this is the ecosystem where there's a transition that also begins, wherein sales team becomes more of a farmer. I mean, they start playing a role of farmer. They start understanding how to farm their customer, so that they can have a bigger lifetime value. So I think that's, hunter versus farmer is also a transition that you normally see.
Yeah, well, Vish, many companies can't afford it, right? So they'll have, it gets down to your budget. And so I agree with you, hunter versus farmer, those are different skills. And you can train them and separate them. And that's what I meant about separating your duties. Do you have the same person doing both duties? If you can afford to have those separate, I think it's more beneficial in terms of execution and efficiency. But if you have one person being both hunter and farmer, well, make sure it's well defined what roles they have to do to be hunter and farmer and be successful at both, and that they're be coaching to make sure that they're doing them on a weekly basis. Otherwise, your execution, some people are going to lean towards farmer, or they're going to lean towards hunter, and they're not going to do their farming roles. And so that's because everyone prefers to be in their sweet spot, their comfort zone, right? Where they prefer. And the critical thing is to have processing and coaching and measurements I'm going to keep going back to Dennis because I love his philosophy: measure, right? Do the analysis as to what is really happening. And so with your salespeople, if you've got them in a dual role of both farmer and hunter, measure that they are doing the percentage of function that you want happening. Is that 60-40, 50-50, 70-30, whatever it is? Measure it and make sure that on a weekly basis that they are performing those functions, and that there's a process behind it as to here's what you should be doing to be your farmer functions, here's what you should be doing in terms of your hunter functions, and make sure they're being done, because we're all human. Change is hard, and we all go to our comfort level.
Let's now talk about some hunters. Let me go to Vivek. Let's talk
Yeah.
about the small businesses and what growth revenue that they can deploy. Vivek?
I'm here.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
Your slides are not there. So you added
My
your
slides
slides.
are, I thought you were going to introduce.
Okay, all right. Yes, of course. I do like to introduce Vivek. So Vivek has been, has been a 3x entrepreneur. He did talk about that, and he is actually tech enthusiast with a proven track record in driving business transformation and process improvement. His unique blend of technical expertise and people-centric philosophy is the secret sauce for revenue acceleration in the digital age. So I and Vivek, we have been kind of in touch for more than a year now, and we had many discussions, especially how we can create value for small and mid-sized companies. And that's where I thought let me invite Vivek to talk about growth hacking, because that's a framework that actually runs quite extensively, especially in this segment. So, Vivek, do you want to add anything
Sure.
else in your profile if I missed out?
No, thank you, Vishwendra, for the great introduction. I've built 2 companies. I'm building Accelerate X Ventures now. I've run a services company. I've built a product company. I am also the co-founder of LinkedIn Local India, and now building Accelerate X Ventures, where we are helping startups, early stage startups in the 1 to 10 journey, helping them expand globally and helping them diversify their revenue share and increase their market share. Great inputs from Dennis and Steven, and I hope all the startups get to that level where that kind of knowledge can be absorbed. To Steven's point around hunting and farming in startup arena, there is a position that does hunting and farming, and there is one position called the founder and CEO, right? That is one person typically that does everything, and the buck stops at that person. So with that, let me share my slides and we'll get started. Give me a moment. I hope my screen is visible.
Not yet.
Should be visible now.
I can't see it. Shall I share the screen from the slides that you uploaded?
Sure, if you can do that.
No, that's not there. You removed those slides.
Okay, give me a moment. I'll just upload them again.
So while Vivek pulls in the slide, there's a lot which is happening, especially in opportunity sizing, deal sizing, with reference to revenue frameworks. We'll be running another session next month. That's going to be again on revenue frameworks, which is going to be part 2. But this session is primarily to talk about their account-based marketing, land and expand, and growth hacking. So while Vivek pulls in his slide,
Can you see the slides now, Vish?
No, it's not visible as yet. Can you upload the slide on the here?
Give me a second. It should be there any second now.
Okay, I can see your slide now. It's here.
All right, fantastic. So I'm going to talk about growth hacking for startups. By definition, startups are constrained in terms of resources. Every startup often starts in the bootstrap mode, where the founders are trying to put in their own resources, time, money, bandwidth, and trying to make the most of whatever they're in pursuit of, whatever they're building, whether it is a product, whether it is a service. And the best way a startup can optimize for growth is where they can apply unconventional strategies for acquisition of early customers so they can grow at a faster pace, so that they can build a predictable revenue pipeline and get to a stage where they are sustainable, where they can offset their burn, where they can get to a stage where people know about the services, people know about the product, the usage is there, uh, where the product market fit may be maybe visible. And so let's deep dive into it. What is growth hacking? Growth hacking is made up of two words. Growth, by definition, is the pursuit of growing from where you are today to the next level in terms of startups, the pursuit of expanding our influence, our customers, our revenue, our market presence, more and more people using our services, more and more people knowing about us. And from a startup's perspective, and we may have very specific metrics that we want to measure on, right? In terms of hacking usually has a negative connotation. In terms of growth hacking is basically bypassing the conventional methods for growth and applying some innovation and some tactics and strategies where we can see the growth at a faster pace. The curve is faster than we should usually imagine, where we apply out of the box approaches to to get a very rapid growth within the constraints that we have. Now, what strategies for startups typically work when we want a very, very fast growth? Now, the product that we're building is the core at which the startup exists. Ideally, the product should be built in a manner that attracts the customers on its own. People go and tell other people about the product, and there is a inbound demand that's happening. But usually that is not the case, because when we're building the product, it's not perfect. We have not achieved what we call as the product market fit. We're building the product, trying to understand what the market needs, and repetitively iterate to evolve the product to come to a stage where a particular segment in the market is finding that product useful for the problems that they're having, and that level of fitment can be called some level of product market fit. And product market fit is never a single point in the journey. It's basically a sequence of events where more and more people start using the services or the product in a particular segment. Right? If there are more segments, better is the product market fit. Then coming to the outbound motion, when the resources of a startup are constrained, many startups make the mistake of telling the world, going on social media, that this is what we are building, this is what we're doing, and that's a very expensive way of getting customers, because the return on your effort and investment is not very, very clear. The best way for a startup to go out is to essentially understand where the customer is sitting, what kind of customer persona you want to target, what is the kind of segmentation you want to do, and be very, very clear in terms of figuring out those ICPs and create multiple ICPs and target them with different sort of experiments, messaging, and trying to get them to the table through unconventional strategies. Everybody, possibly will run an email campaign and wait for people to respond. However, the response rates have been decreasing year over year because now anybody can pick up a tool and just shoot an email to anybody on the planet. Some of the strategies that have worked, and one very good example that I have is that how about we reach out to customers over a call, right? And when you're very early stage, you want to try every tactic that is available to experiment and see if this is working for you. For example, we run an email marketing campaign over 1,000 prospect data points, email IDs, and we get about 20% open rate, which is about 200, and let's say 20 people open that email multiple times. What if we call those people and try to align an understanding of what their problem is and how our solution is fitting there, right? This is unconventional, but this will give you an idea of what people are reading on that email, what do they understand, and it will also bring a voice, the person behind that email. Every strategy needs to be experimented because you do not have any claim to fame in terms of whether this will work for you or not, even though you may know the market very, very well. The third part is obviously going and telling the world what you're doing, but also doing this in a very intelligent manner. For example, building a list of potential customers who may be interested in listening to who you are, so that you can build thought leadership, you can build ideas, you can have digital assets that people will be interested in listening to, and also educate them. The idea is not to sell, the idea is to educate so that people find value in what you are saying. And then the last bit is data and experiments. Startups should be an experimentation machine, right? We don't know what is going to work, and we do not know what is not going to work, right? And as Dennis talked about 80-20, 80% of the experiments may fail, only 20% may give us value, and we keep doubling down on what is working. So data is very, very key, because we do not have the luxury of large companies where we can do a lot of things. So if we can do 10, we need to prioritize and see where we need to put our money. Let's take on a very interesting example of a CRM SaaS product that we were working with, and we applied a very simple framework that's called the RISE framework. It's a very popular framework for reach, impact, confidence, and ease. And we wanted to reach out to the masses across geographies to figure out where we can build traction for this product. And we built a hypothesis around who could be potential users of the product, and we figured mid-market and startups will be a good use case because enterprise will take a lot of time and we did not have that much bandwidth to wait. So we created a data set of about 10,000 potential prospects with different kinds of segmentation. We divided that to be targeted over a period of 4 months, and that entire campaign, generated over 110 meetings that finally led to 20% conversions. Obviously, the pricing model was evolved over a period of time, and some discounts were given initially, but this gave a lot of insights in terms of what is working for the market, what problem statements are there in the market, and the product also evolved as a part of this journey. And when we ran this, we had done similar exercises before in different regions, so the confidence was pretty high, and the ease was pretty straightforward because we knew how to set up the admin part of it. The important part was the messaging, to really understand the pain points that customers have, whether it is in terms of using a very popular product that is very expensive, or products that do not work for us because they do not solve the problem that maybe a SMB or a mid-market business owner is trying to solve. Now, while there are many strategies for startups, there are various other channels that you can use for growth, and many startups assume that these strategies may not work for us because we do not have the reach, or we do not have the money or the bandwidth. But if you're very, very smart in terms of your access to network, or in terms of understanding and experimenting, some of these strategies may really work for you. Not everything will work. Maybe one or two will work really, really well, but you will not know unless you experiment, right? So I've shared this, and divided into 5 categories, which include your marketing, and PR, your how are you using content, how are you using ads, which obviously will need more money to see the ROI. Referral programs work for very many startups. Community is very, very interesting for many startups because, but it takes a lot of effort. And initially, if you are very desperate for getting revenue on the table, then you need to have some strategies for the short term, the medium term, and the long term. So yes, that's what I have to share today in the paucity of time. And thank you, Vishwendra, for the opportunity. And open to any questions.
Thank you, Vivek. Thank you so much for taking us to a real world use case study. I had a question. I actually want to ask you a question there. When you had these 20 conversions, and I think there are 100 opportunities that you were able to generate. Apart from email, did you also had any other channel or any other way, touch points that you created to kind of nurture your contacts during those 4 months? Or
So
it was all through?
We typically use a multi-threaded approach because one single touch point, is a point of failure. So we also parallelly, generated the list for LinkedIn. We targeted them, and then we also had, calling activities that went through. And for calling, the example that I gave, we want to figure out what are the sort of warm leads. We don't want to just do a simple cold call, but people who may be interested. And email gives you a lot of data, right? Who is opening the email? When are they opening? Have they opened it multiple times? So on and so forth. So you use that data, and we use a very small percentage of the entire data set to decide which are the people we are going to call. Because now this is not a pure cold call, right? There is some reference. They've seen the name. There's some problem. That is why they opened that email multiple times, or they did something with it, and that really helps because when you're pitching, it's not usually one person who's making a decision. So when you're reaching out to a company, we never target one email address. We will target, let's say, 5 stakeholders, right? From the leadership team and somebody who's heading a functional team for which this product may make sense, right? And when we do that, typically what people internally do is they share it in a way. But if somebody has already seen it, then it brings more familiarity, right? Obviously, this science is not perfect, and there is a lot of throwing spaghetti on the wall, hoping some will stick. But once we iterate over a period of time, we get a hang for which campaign, for which segment, for which product, how it is going to be. And obviously, there are failures all the time, left, right, etc. It's not,
I agree.
But then it's how you improve your odds and how you improve your averages, in performance over a period of time.
So I remember we're actually working with a consulting company, and the consulting company's team, marketing team, they have been sending out emails right and left to all the contacts that they have in the system. But it was not an intelligent. So, and CEO was a little pissed off that it seems there's a potential lead leakage, and how can we address that? So obviously, we worked with them, and we kind of put together certain frameworks that can be leveraged. So while you talked about multi-way approach, especially on email, so that certainly works. If there's an intelligent way of putting the various threads together to kind of reach to the goals that you have laid out for your activity. But yeah, just since we already have these to our time, but I may just pick one or two questions for you, Vivek, and for all the panelists. So one question, especially for you, Vivek, is how do you identify the right growth channels for your SMB? So what is that? You talked about email, but then you also talked about various other channels which are available, right? And when we speak to when the founders are there and founders do not know where to start. So what step or tips that you want to provide for these founders, which channel they can start with, or what strategy that they can put together, which can actually help them meet their goals. And believe me, they normally have short-term goals. They do not have long-term goals. So they want to have to meet their goals in the next 3 months or 6 months. That's the longest that they can wait.
Got it. So there is no, golden answer for this. And I think as humans, we want to predict what is going to work, right? And my advice to everybody who asks me this question is, I don't know. I don't know what is going to work for you, even though it may have worked for a similar company in your domain, right? All you need to do is to build a hypothesis. Okay, I can do 20 things, right? So let's pick out those 5 things that may make sense for us, because we are sure those 15 are, of lesser impact than these 5. And then obsessively experiment and run experiments which are less than 1 to 2 weeks, right? I cannot run an experiment which is 3 months long because I don't have that kind of patience as a startup, right? I run that experiment and then I see immediate results, and because the experiment will give me some data points. It may not give me the entire outcome, but in 2 weeks, I will know where this is going, whether this is working for me, because the experiment will also depend upon what is my strength as a person, right? A startup may do very well in viral marketing because the team is very creative, but somebody else may do very well on, social media or, outbound, right? We may think that if you try to force something that, no, this has to work, obviously you need to iterate and look at the data and see how you can improve. But initially, the answer is that you pick out, do an 80-20. You may think, okay, these are the 20 things out of 100 that may work. And then obsessively iterate on those things and see what is working for you, right? Talk to your network and see what has worked for them and try and do those experiments. Some will fail, some will succeed. There are obviously some standard, strategies that are there that everybody wants to try. But then you need to also think out of the box, because if everybody is doing the same, you will also get the same results.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for sharing your insights. And let me just have one more question for the entire panel. So while we talked about 3 different frameworks, do you think it will be wise to kind of have 2 or 3 frameworks or 2 or 3 approaches or strategies while we drive our revenue growth, or we want to bring bigger impact to our revenue growth? So you think if all these three strategies, while we talk about from a size perspective, larger enterprise may probably prefer more of account-based marketing. Smaller enterprises may have a growth hacking. But you think if all these 3 strategies can be combined and can actually create greater value for them, or any organization of any sizes?
Absolutely. Yeah. No doubt. I mean, and I think you need to I think we're trying to all say is you need to be thinking about it as you start your sales strategy. What are the next steps? And then measure. I mean, as Vivek's pointed out, measure. I mean, you should know fairly quickly what works and what doesn't, and have a plan A, B, C in your marketing strategy, sales strategy, and then the customer retention and then expansion strategy. They should all be components of what you're doing, and reevaluate. I mean, as Vivek has pointed out, be ready. I mean, hacking, I think, I love that term of using it as a sales and marketing. Adjust. If you get lost and it's not whatever you're doing isn't working, don't be afraid to make a left turn.
Right. Yeah. Dennis, any comments from your end? You're on mute.
I am a proponent in my heart of specialization. You get really good at something and just do that till the cows come home. And I'm also of the opinion that an awful lot of us on the call and our audience and the technology vendor community at large are not big on specialization in terms of their personnel, right? One day you're making outbound phone calls, the next day you're writing content. And I understand that people are given certain jobs, but and especially in startups, it's jack of all trade. But if it were me, I would grab one way of doing things and become a monsterly good advocate at doing those things before I start running around trying another entire system. And I base this on my history of buying and selling stocks. If I kept reaching, all right, let me just end with this. There is an expression for every circumstance in the stock market. If you snooze, you lose, and don't fight the trend, and don't, there's an expression for everything. None of them mean bupkis in terms of your success in actually investing in the market. You really just got to get a system going and specialize your brains out and whack that thing to death. And while it's up and running and it becomes part of the DNA in the organization, grab another thing if you want to and bolt it onto the system. Anyway, I'm kind of a specialization guy, just the nature of things.
Good advice.
Yeah. Vivek, anything you want to add?
I don't think startups have that kind of luxury where we can do one thing to death. The startup will die the very, very, very moment the founder. And for a very long time, there was this notion that specialists are the best, which I partly agree. But then the book came, I think, Range, which talked about why generalists are, you also need to be a generalist because, and startups need a lot of generalists because we cannot have 10 people. A team of 3 has to do the work of 10, right? And you cannot do it if everybody's a specialist who will do the job of 7, right?
Well, yeah.
So,
I mean, I think, Vivek, your point is that a startup, they don't have the option of keep doing the same thing that isn't working over and over again.
And if I'm a master of something that is not working, experiment fails, what do I do with that person?
Exactly.
So I think for every kind of market, the strategies need to differ. Vivek,
if I could ask you, you guys wrote 10,000 emails. Am I right?
No, we did not write 10,000 emails. We sent 10,000 emails to 10,000 different
I'm sorry,
people.
maybe I phrased it. That's what I mean. Were there tranches of different emails, or did you send 10,000 emails?
We use Pentax, so the content slightly varied because Google is getting smarter every day. It can identify, right? Plus also for experimentation of what kind of content is working, right?
Yeah, I think startups, they're constantly reinventing themselves and constantly having to be creative, or otherwise they won't survive. They won't make it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. So this was a wonderful discussion that we had, and just want to conclude. I believe our audience would have certainly got a lot of insights and actionable insights that they can implement in their scenarios. But they can be mindful of in terms of while we discuss about certain factors in terms of prioritizing revenue engines, but they can. It's primarily just a summary of what we discussed. So measure impact, analyze unique approaches. So keep experimenting. That's very important. Assess scalability. Can you scale that model to different markets, or it has to be a very specialized approach. Evaluate competitive advantage. Are you getting advantage out of this this framework? And gauge customer response. So in fact, we covered all these 5 elements as part of a conversation that we had today. But it was a wonderful discussion with you, with all of you, Vivek, Steven, and Dennis. We are having our next session, which is on 14th of August. And this is going to be again part 2 of igniting X factor of your revenue engine. With the essential framework. So we'll have new frameworks that we are going to be talking about in this session. Ritika has shared a link of that session in the LinkedIn comment section, so you can register for this session, and we look forward to seeing you there. But I'd like to thank everyone who has joined us today in this session, and I'm sure we are going to have a much enriching session next month. But thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Steven. And thank you, Vivek, for joining this call.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Really enjoyed this.